Hello everybody, welcome back for another episode of the Stokes Sound podcast. Today we have special guest, Aidan Duncan. Aidan, how are you doing?
Great, how are you today?
I'm good, thank you. I wanted to bring you onto the show because I wanted to get, an amazing recording engineer like yourself, and our listeners, I think, would absolutely enjoy hearing from you and a little bit about what you do and your process in the recording engineering world. So thank you so much for coming on. If you want to give yourself a little introduction about yourself, I know I've said what you do, i.e. recording engineer, but if you want to expand on that, feel free to, so our listeners can have a listen.
Yeah, my name is Aidan Duncan. I'm from Seattle, Washington originally. Live in LA, work out of LA. I'm a recording engineer underneath Dave Pensado for 4 years. Learned amazing stuff, now I'm, moving into mixing quite more, but I really see myself as like almost as a curator in a lot of sessions, whether it's placing beats, just getting songs to flow through. I used to produce quite a bit, so I have, that still production kind of mind. And I usually bring that into sessions as they come up.
Fantastic. So kind of if we kind of go from, the start, then, I mean, are you mainly doing recording sessions? Are you recording vocals? Are you recording, what's like your main thing that you kind of do on a day-to-day basis?
It's mainly vocals.
Yeah.
I think vocals are phenomenal. I think that they are usually the number one thing in every track.
100%.
They're the most memorable things that people can remember, and it's the things that you usually copyright. It's what really identifies a song, and all the other pieces are really supposed to be helping that the lead line. So I really take a huge interest in really getting the best out of a singer, or whether it's an instrumentalist or whatever it is that day that we're recording. It's usually vocals, but watching songs come to life is really an amazing thing to watch.
Amazing. Well, you said it yourself, like vocals is like the most important thing ever. Bad vocal recording,
It's just
it's the end.
Yeah.
We've got things like Melodyne, but even then, as you know yourself,
sometimes
you've got to record it.
you can't polish a turd, but sometimes you can paint it gold, but
Very well said. So, if you're, working with singers, a lot of the listeners on this podcast are, musicians, mixers, producers, mastering engineers, and a lot of people kind of say the same thing about it. The vocal is so important, and, recording at source is the most important thing. It's like a domino effect. If it's a good recording, the mix is going to be good, and then the mastering is going to be good because everything else in the chain is good. So if we kind of go back to basics, then what is like your vocal chain that you tend to use when you're recording? Feel free to give us any examples, and then we can go from there.
Yeah, so one of the things that I've just been using heavily recently, I got a Sony C800 into my BAE 1073 into a CL1B. It's
Can't
been a
go wrong with
little,
that.
can't go wrong with that, and it's a little bit, the industry standard. I had been using a 251 recently, by Ericsson
Lovely.
Labs. It's a very close recreation. It sounds amazing. It really depends what genre I'm going for, and whether it's a male, whether it's a female. Usually just dependent on how high in the register they sing, because sometimes the C800 can come in a little too harsh and a little too bright. Depending if it's
It's
a
a bright
female
light, the
singing
C800.
very, very, very high falsettos, it's sometimes a little too aggressive. But it's very simple, and even when it's hitting that CL1B, it's just tapping it, just barely, like a dB, maybe 2 on some loud parts. It's nothing too crazy. I do get quite a bit of gain out of the CL1B, and if I'm at a studio where they have a EQ P1A by Poltech, I'm going to go ahead and toss that right in before
course.
the compressor. I mean, if they have it, Sadly, I do not have one, but on the wish list, I guess you can say.
My wish list is never ending.
Yeah, exactly. And music is never
LA2A's,
ending.
Paul Tex, 1176, it will go on and on.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
It's like a mortgage.
Seriously, you just keep taking out more.
It's interesting what you said actually about the CL1B. It's my favorite compressor as well for vocals, and it's the standard in anything really commercial pop. Everyone seems
Right.
to be using it, but you say you boost the gain up quite a bit. That's quite interesting. The old school trick is if you're doing 2 dB, boost the gain up 2 dB so it balances out volume wise. So you actually boosting a lot more gain than you're
Yeah, I'm
actually
actually
compressing.
boosting quite a bit more. I've just like, through
Is
trial
that for
and
the
error,
sound?
and then yeah, and through trial and error and just pushing the actual tubes inside of it, and realize, and I had been to a couple of different studios, and a lot of people are going crazy on the compression or not, and kind of seeing where that comes from, and then going and seeing what's on the preamp. I usually output fairly quiet on the preamp. I usually try to get as much headroom as possible, and then make up for that through certain things like the CL1B, or as soon as it hits Pro Tools, I'm doing that with my vocal bus, and just
Yeah.
compensating in there just because I like that headroom. And one of the things that's one of the biggest downfalls, I believe, in recording vocals is just you're recording way too loud. I mean, even if it's not clipping and it's still too loud, it still gets this weird dynamic stuff going on.
Uh,
And so it's like boosting it off the CO1B does give it this richness and this tone that it's not, you're not just cranking it up, but I'm adding like maybe 4 or 5 more dB than what it's doing on a gain reduction side.
that's quite a lot actually, but that's nice. I mean, you like the tube sound, so why not? If it
Exactly.
sounds good, do it. It's
Yeah.
actually interesting when you said about when people get the gain staging wrong and recording in vocals, because although like you cannot be digitally clipping, it can still sound like, I find it can sound a bit brittle, a bit harsh when I've got a Neve 1073. I absolutely love it, and people say, oh, you can really drive it, and you can, but I feel like if you drive it too much, it kind of gets this weird, I don't know how to explain it.
Yeah.
Not what I like personally.
Yeah. It makes it a little boxy, kind of has that
Yeah.
little bit of a nasally tone too. Yeah, I mean, I'm
Yeah.
usually only a couple, like 1 or 2 clicks up from zero on the preamp, and then
Yeah.
just turning the output all the way up. I don't like really hearing the preamp,
Yeah.
at all to that regard.
Interesting, because a lot of people say the opposite, don't they? They're like, let's just drive this preamp, get the sound out of
All the way, and then output a little bit, and then yeah.
it.
Yeah, and
We've all
that's
been there. We've
great
all
for
been told.
some, and sometimes you got like a rock song, and I don't usually work on the genres where that's really gonna come to
Yeah.
fruition. I'm mainly doing hip hop, Afro beat, a little bit of pop. So it's not very aggressive with these styles, but I definitely feel like in rock that's gonna align a little bit better. But yeah,
Yeah. Just add any distortion, right? Fab filter Saturn. Just
exactly.
drive that vocal.
Yeah, a little bit of decapitator on there.
I can't go wrong with that.
Exactly.
It's funny you say that. I use that in parallel a lot, depending on what genre I'm doing. But one of the old school tricks. But amazing. So you mentioned about doing different genres. I mean, I know you said for our listeners. I mean, what are you mainly specializing in? Is it hip hop? What's your kind of, or what's the thing that brings
Uh,
you the most joy? I guess.
at the moment, right now, uh, it's Afrobeat,
Yeah.
and almost like it's not old school R&B, but it's like this modern twist with R&B, you know what I'm
Nice.
saying? So I've been
Yeah.
working with a couple artists recently where it's, I do love making those beautiful lush harmony stacks and hearing,
Yeah.
the runs. I like that stuff. So I'm mainly in those two on like a interest.
Yeah. And then as far as like recording them from a recording standpoint, is your process different depending on what genre you're doing or what style of singer, or is it still the same kind of process?
Uh I usually it's the same process, and it's all dependent on in the very end, it's all dependent on the actual artist and who they
Yeah.
are and how they work. You know, because some people are super this way and some people are super the other way, right? And so it's really comes down to catering that person as best as possible. Some people don't like hearing themselves when they record. You know what I'm saying? So some people, it can be so many different things. So then it's like I have to, you know, go on the fly, think of a couple of different things, and usually, you know, I'm in and around the same process though. Just about making the artist feel comfortable, safe, and that they're the best in the room. You know what I'm saying? Every time.
All those things you're saying is amazing. I think anybody listening to this podcast, you've really got to take that into you know your mind, that you've got to make sure the artist is the most comfortable ever, because at the end of the day, it's all about vocal performance. It's all about capturing the magic from the vocal. Because, like we said, you know, a few minutes ago, if you don't get a good vocal on a track, it doesn't matter about anything else. The vocal, in my eyes, and sure in yours as well, it's the vocal is everything. It sits on top of the track. Obviously depends on genre, but it's a pretty
Yeah.
important part.
Yeah. And I think,
Yep.
sorry, I was going to just say, I think one thing to really hone in on that statement as well is to get the best vocal recording. That doesn't also that's not when I say that, I don't mean that sounds the best. Like from a frequency perspective, that always will come into you know, the equation. But the main thing when it's the best vocal performance is the emotion, the openness, how does it actually make you feel? Because, you know, people can sing out of key and it can still be the best vocal performance you've ever heard. It could be, you know, it could be clipping. You know, I would love it not to be clipping, but if that's absolutely the best thing and the artist kills it and there's so much emotion under it, I'm gonna find a way post production to make that work. You know, and
That's
that
when RX comes in.
exactly. Shout out to Isotope. I do love Isotope and all their products, especially for vocal cleanup. They're very helpful.
Declick,
But
mouth declick, can't go wrong.
yeah, you cannot go wrong with all that. You know, deep plosive, and it's those are some magical tools that have transformed the game for me vocally. Because, you know, whether, you know, maybe they get the best vocal recording in their car or the bathroom or wherever it is, that you hear people in the background talking, you hear whatever's going on, dishes going, or people are in the studio behind them hitting bottles or smoking or whatever it is, you know, whatever that best emotional vocal is going to be your key, and just treating it how it is, you know? I mean, even for Post Malone 2 albums ago, I mean, all he did was, you know, UAD with a pictures of TLM and just UAD, nothing in between, and just right into Pro Tools. And that, so it doesn't necessarily matter, you know, that it's these compressors and preamps and all this stuff. It's all about the artist and their performance.
Amazing. It's so true. And that is literally what it is, because what's the point of all the equipment
Yeah,
if the performance isn't good, or if the vocal's not good? I mean, as a
exactly.
recording engineer yourself, how are you finding, you know, you were in obviously big studios, I'm sure you're in smaller studios, but how do you find dealing nowadays, especially post-COVID, when everybody's kind of, well, I found, especially in England, a lot of people kind of bought their own recording setups. And are you finding that you're dealing with, I guess, vocals that have been more poorly recorded than ever, more nowadays, or you know, how has that kind of changed for you as a recording engineer? Because, you know, recording engineers, you know, we love to go into the best studios ever and with the best equipment ever, and you know, major part is the best room as well as a big part in a lot of the stuff. And yeah, how have you found it now with
Yeah,
everything?
a lot of people have been moving into their own home studios, um, which is, you know, which is amazing. You know, people are able to lock in. I think it gives a different light for engineering. You know, I think that
Yeah,
sometimes people, you know, they gotta hop in the studio and just get that good setup and go. But
You miss
I
the
get it.
vibe,
If
don't you? When you're in the studio, you
Yeah,
have that vibe.
it's always a vibe, but sometimes
Mm.
people are scared of those instances. Sometimes it's daunting to walk into a big studio. I mean, unless you're a huge artist who's been doing it quite a while, it's daunting for a lot of people. And if they can still get their best vocal take at their house with the garbage truck going around in the background, let's do it. I mean, that's still it. Even if it's coming off of the worst microphone ever, it does make my life a little bit trickier, um, you know, for
Yeah.
actually cleaning and editing the vocals. But um, if preferable, yeah, I would like to invite him into a studio. But you know,
Wouldn't we all? We all say the same.
yeah, it is what it
do,
is sometimes.
do you find that you're, a lot of the artists you're working with, do you find that you're actually going to, their studios or their places to do stuff now, or is it mainly still all studio for you? Them come to you.
It really depends. I used to be a very portable engineer. I used to go to a lot of places. I have since just said, if you want to record, we basically either have to go to a big studio or we go to mine. Just for just for chain reasons, and
Yeah.
being able to studio, and they usually have the same chains everywhere helps a lot. If you do half a record in the day and you need to go do it somewhere else, the next
Yeah.
day, it usually helps for continuity. But
Yeah.
as much as I can, trying to have them in my studio or somewhere else.
Yeah, yeah. More comfortable for you as well if it's in yours. You can just kind of, your setup, everything. So when you are,
Exactly.
tracking, recording, um, are you, when you're recording, are you kind of working with the singer as well as like, because a lot of the big stars will obviously have vocal coaches, and all of that sort of stuff. But in your workflow, as a recording engineer, are you trying to speak to the artist to get that delivery when you're recording them, or is there someone else kind of doing that for you and you just focus on the technical side?
Yeah,
um
it
yeah.
really depends. Some artists, yeah, do have coaches, do have actual writers in the room
Yeah.
that are vocal producing them, and so that's their thing to do. I used to sing myself, so I understand, um, you know, timing, placements, notes. I understand where
I
all
want
this
to get into
falls.
that.
I'm not the
Yeah.
best singer myself,
Yeah.
but I understand how it needs to be done and how some songs need to be expressed. Just continuity, tone from each section. Does it actually also like? Does it sound punched? Does it? You know what I'm saying? So it's not necessarily I'm saying how exactly to sing it, because I don't really know how to sing it exactly myself. But if I need to tell them, yo, we got to hit this again, we got to hit it again. Um,
And as an engineer,
so
if something sounds comped, if you've got to
yeah,
redo the part before, kind of thing.
yeah.
Yeah. Do you have I know a lot of listeners will want to know, when you are recording vocals, do you have like a set way of doing it, in the sense of, okay, so you've got a vocalist, you're in a studio and you're about to record them. Can you kind of talk us through your process, kind of from beginning of recording the record to kind of the end? I guess specifically in vocals, do you get them to sing a part of the whole song first and then do section by section? Um,
It
that kind
really
of stuff.
depends. I mean, for hip hop and rap, a lot of the time it's going to be punch style recording. So
Yep.
it's maybe a line to two lines, boom. Let's as it's playing, we drop the playhead back. They hear it, and then they start recording and pick up right at the end of it. Sometimes it's maybe they've already had the entire song written and now they're just performing it. It all depends if the song's actually written or not. Sometimes it isn't. So we'll do some melody passes, comp the melody passes, and then write to that. But usually I like to do section by section. I do have an artist I work with who will just do 3 entire takes of the entire song, start to front, or start to finish, and I'll have to comp through that real quick. Like as he's doing it, I'll take, oh, that sounded great in this section. We're gonna drop this down this playlist, and by the time he's done recording all three, I have the first one ready, and then we'll just do harmonies and backgrounds and doubles over that new comp lead,
Yeah.
which is, it's a different process for me. Like it puts me way more in the seat of like, okay, we got to get this like
You
fast and
sound like you
quick
work very
because
quick.
yeah, getting it done quick as possible is the best. I think that um, a lot of first takes are usually the best takes. And I think right within there, and sometimes you need to hit that thing 30 times before you can get the right vibrato and the right, intonation of each note. But if you can have that artist go in there and they hit that and it's perfect level on the mic, perfect height of the mic, headphones are just right, you know what I'm saying? There's a vibe in the recording booth, there's a vibe in the studio. They feel good and comfortable. They can usually hit it, first or second time how it's supposed to be done naturally without them thinking about it and overthinking and being like, oh, how do I need to perform this? But that
Yeah.
first or second one, they got it how they normally do it, which is amazing. And that's usually
Yeah.
the best takes and the best emotion and how it feels smooth. Yeah.
That's the overthinking's like our worst enemy, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
just like
Don't overthink
as soon as you
anything. Yeah.
overthink, might as well go home.
Exactly.
Amazing. So, do you find then that are you tuning when you're in a vocal session and you're recording the vocals? Are you recording with autotune? Are you doing Melodyne after the session and then adding autotune? I know people want to know the secrets.
Well, so now with the new Pro Tools update, shout out to Pro Tools. I still
Yeah,
have a couple bugs with it, but the new Melodyne that they've introduced inside of Pro Tools is so legendary and so game changing that yeah, I mean, I will record with autotune on,
not
and
printed
just
though, or
not printed. Yeah, it's
yeah,
all in the DAW, not printed. And sometimes it's crazy for rap. 6 to 0 millisecond kind of retune speed, some T-Pain stuff, and then usually with a little bit of humanize, it's nice, but the new Melodyne is so fast that you're just able to open it up and just go clip by clip. And okay, this one little thing needs to be changed. I can do it really quick instead of having to transport it all into Melodyne and then go and then bounce it down,
I
put
know
it
that
on.
feeling.
Now, hate that stuff. There's a couple things I would change because now you can't add clip effects before auto tune. You got to auto tune at Melodyne, and then Melodyne auto tune, and then do clip effects because I've been
Oh,
using clip effects quite a bit.
yeah, I was going to say you. So you're if you're with the way the Pro Tools is, you're Melodyning first, and then you're doing autotune. Is that what?
Correct. Yeah, just
Yeah,
inside the actual like step of getting the vocal finished. Just to get the vocal out, I'm only using auto tune. Just
yep,
for their hear back, we get it going through. Okay, maybe this is the perfect take, but he's a little bit sharp in this note. You know what I'm saying? He's a little bit flat on this one. We'll just use the Melodyne to quickly just get those into a key and then carry on, kind of thing. And I'll usually do that after, they've already stepped out the booth in a way.
yeah, yeah.
But I try
I
to
always
at
think
least get it
autotune
done
sounds
before.
better after Melodyne. That's why I tend to do Melodyne, go through any major issues. I don't Melodyne everything. Well, I don't know,
Yeah.
and some people do, I guess. But I personally do a little bit, just so if it autotune catches the wrong note, you know what autotune does sometimes. It just catches that wrong note. It's like it's not in the key. I don't know how
It's
that's happened.
not, yeah, exactly. That's not it. But yeah, and sometimes it's, there's a lot of theories on melody and whether or not, you need to be in key for certain parts of phrases. There's a ton of books out there that have read and really love where it's, talking about um, like certain impact notes that need to be perfectly in pitch, like they need to be in pitch, and some they don't necessarily need to be there, whether that's the start and finish of a line, like needing to be in pitch. But some of the like leading notes and follow notes, they don't necessarily need to always be directly in the middle of the note. So
Yeah,
trying to never take away a ton of the performance I might need to use a little pitch variation here and there, but just trying to stay close to the actual recording as possible without making it sound too robotic is,
But
always key for me.
kind of goes back to what we said at the start. Just get it right to begin with.
Exactly.
I mean,
Yeah.
I know autotune has a sound, but when I first started out years ago, I was using Melodyne because, when you get Melodyne, you just go crazy with it. And I was just making sure everything was snapped to center. And, there are songs where it needs to be like that, but you realize that it just sounds way too not natural, way too tuned. So now I just
Yeah.
use the Alt key and I just slide it up, just manually, just hear it. Then I brush it over with autotune just so it fixes anything. That's kind of
Exactly.
the way I've been doing it. And I feel like you get the better result via that. And it kind of sounds like you're doing a similar thing, which is it's nice to hear. I'm doing
Yeah.
something right.
Yeah, 100%. And I always try to think about autotune as an effect. I don't
Yeah,
like
it has a
thinking
sound.
about
Yeah.
as like an actual thing, like an actual building block of music. I
Mm,
think, you know, it's a sound, it's a style, it's this vibe. Like some songs I won't use autotune, right? And some
yeah.
songs it will just be like a lot of this R&B and a lot of more laid back stuff. It's going to be just Melodyne because I don't want that actual effect of autotune. And a lot, on the other half, when it's hip hop, I mean, you got to hear that specific tune. But
Yeah. Part of the sound.
whether
Yeah.
it's on Tares or I know Logic's pitch correction sounds decently well, and sometimes the waves. So uh, there's different styles of autotune as well, which is amazing. So there's a ton of stuff to choose from in and around autotune, which is amazing. And
Yeah. Yeah. I think auto tuning and melodyning is like it's a thing in itself. It's what I always say, like, you have people that just do Melodyne. It's a whole skill set in itself, tuning a vocal.
it's nuts, yeah.
Yeah, it's
Add 30
interesting.
backgrounds, and with a lot of these big pop records, we're talking, I'm talking like, Katy Perry and Pink and Adele, I mean, we're talking lots and lots and lots of vocals where you're going to need to make sure, the vibrato on 30 different instances of this ending of the
Yeah,
note, is all perfectly, and with Melodyne you can do that, but it's definitely a huge skill where you're like, well, that's a lot of work that you have to
time
do.
consuming.
It's very time consuming. But it's beautiful. And then once you hear that final product, gives you the chills, gives you the goosebumps, and you're like, wow, okay, there we go. We got
That
it.
sounds good. Do you
Yeah.
find yourself as a recording engineer that you're expected to be doing that, or not? In the
Uh
sense of, as because I know the listeners, they're probably listening, thinking, "Oh, okay, I need to tune vocals, I need to do all of this." But as a recording engineer slash mixing engineer, do you feel like with what you do, you're expected to do that on most projects?
yes. So,
Yeah,
and again, I don't have the best ear when it comes to just pitch in general, but I do know what it's supposed to feel like. So if I can get that final product at the end of the night when they're like, "Hey, yo, can you airdrop me or send me the song?" Right? If I don't send them something that I think that they could put out in that instance, like right then, right there, of course they're not going to, but if I send them something that I don't think that they'll do that, I have failed that session in my opinion. So by the end of it, when they're leaving, I'm definitely going to have every problem area. There might be a couple hairs of stuff here and there, but every major tuning problem is already going to be finished.
yeah.
And so with the new Pro Tools update, it's really easy to do all this stuff fast. So
There's no
now I can
excuses.
feel confident where it's like boom, and
Yeah,
I got vocal line up, so whenever somebody's basically done with a take and while they're doing the next one, I'm already aligning their next take with
yeah.
the lead. I've made sure that lead is obviously in a great pocket in the final pocket because then I'll have to shift everything at that point. But you know, vocal aligning and then making sure like everything's in time, everything's in key, like fast as possible.
Do you
By the
so you
time you
use
hit
Vocaline
playback,
for that?
love vocal line,
So
and I
you
don't.
do, Are you putting the vocal in its pocket first when you're doing the dubs, the BVs? You're then vocalizing that to the lead. Is that what?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're doing that live on the flow while recording at the same time, kind of thing.
Yeah. So like
Wow.
as they're doing one pass, I'm doing their previous pass.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Aligning, boom, we're cutting off all the dead space. We're you don't
There's
need
your
all
answer. That's
that
how you work
extra.
quick.
Yeah. But, and
Multitasking.
it's a lot of multitasking, but when you hit play for them, like when they when you see them coming out the booth and you about to hit play, because I always love hitting play right as they walk in, so then they get that first, like, okay, here we go, here's this take, but like it better sound perfect when you hit play. You know what I'm saying? Like that's your job. That's your whole thing while you're there. And they want to feel like they, because when you play something super super amazing back to them, they even get more juiced up. They get more confident in themselves. They're able to hit the next song, next take, next whatever it is with way more confidence, and usually giving out a better vocal performance. So trying to do that is a huge thing for me.
Amazing. Have you got, like, in your recording template, have you set up reverb delays already on the fly as well? Are they hearing that? I know it will depend on the artist, but are you doing all of that as well when recording?
Yeah. So right away, you sound like, as soon as I put you in there, in the track lane, I mean, you sound immediately, you're like, whoa, dreamy, or whatever it is. Sometimes I need to, depending what, if it's rap, I'm gonna do a certain thing, and if it's R&B and it's a lot more runs, I'm gonna try to go a little more this way with a little more heavy effects. It's nothing too crazy, on delays and stuff like this. It's one nice little delay going, couple reverbs, and then I have a lot of bus processing going, having all my vocals go through immediately. But I usually only use one bus, so all vocals basically go to one bus, so everything sounds like it's in the same place. And especially just during recording, I want no latency ever. I don't want ever for them to feel like it's late or anything like that. So using as little plugins as possible during,
and low latency on.
And making sure, I think everything comes from, kind of like how we've been saying this whole conversation of just getting it perfect out the gate. You know what I'm saying? Is just, the order of how you clean things. And, so I'm going clip gain, we're getting the tune going. Okay, then we're hitting plugins. So now all the plugins are getting an amazing sound, instead of like just shoving everything out of plugin and being like, here, try to compensate, whatever is going on here and read it. But yeah.
Are you usually recording vocals when you're doing it to a 2-track, or are you doing it to the full production in the Pro Tools session? Is that, I mean,
it's usually a 2-track. I'll, and with latency, it's just usually easier. And it's usually less stuff to think about. Boom, I can just see it. I can do it. I'm able to make, fast, production things, whether it needs to be a beat pull out, a filtering of the beat in this section. It's way easier to do it with just a 2-track or instrumental than having to try to do an entire group of stems or an entire production. And these things are going on. And so, as clean and as simple as possible, the process, so I can really focus in on what's happening with the vocalist, right?
I assume that's only when you're the recording engineer, in the sense of when you are putting your mixing hat on or you're sending it to a mixing engineer. I guess they'll do that all within the stems. Is that right? Or usually would you just keep it to the 2-track and go from there?
Yeah, so usually they'll take it on, and then I'll import all the stems myself. If I'm mixing the project, I'll bring in all the stems. I'll see what I've done to the 2-track, if anything, maybe brought it down a bit in volume, did this kind of EQing, and I'll just make a mental note of that and be like, okay, let's have the stems immediately reflect that. So then I'm finishing and starting off where that sound was,
Gotcha.
in that
so you're using
final
that as
bounce.
like a template. Yeah,
because I think that one of the hardest things to ever beat, you know, in this industry is demo-itis, you know, and people who are stuck to their demo or to their rough. So when it's ever come time for me to mix something, and let's say I haven't even recorded it and I'm just a mixer on the project, I I take into account their rough greatly. You know what I'm saying? I
Yeah.
don't
Major part
believe
for
it's
me as
a
well.
yeah. I
Always the
think
rough.
that
Yeah.
you're just fighting you're fighting yourself at that point if you're not going to take their rough into account, because if you can start where exactly they finished and you're just enhancing their vision and bringing that to life, I think that's,
There'll be less
easier and more
revisions.
exactly, whether it's, "Oh,
Yeah.
okay, you gotta turn that vocal up a little bit more, turn that down a bit more, bring the bass up to this," it's right where you had it, we're gonna just enhance that, so
That's
if
what
I can
mixing's
do that
about.
as well and send it off to a mixer and
Yeah.
leave that exactly where it is, they can see, boom, okay, he's done this to the instrumental, then they can do that to the stems,
So
or I
it's,
can do
yeah.
that to the stems, and I can finish exactly where um, you know, or start exactly where I had finished last time.
Yeah. You mentioned something earlier about getting the vocal in the pocket. I think it would be good to have a chat about that, because I feel like that is sometimes is what makes the vocal incredible. Obviously, good singer, but if you can nudge things to make it in the pocket, it's amazing. I mean, do you find I personally, when I'm nudging vocals, I tend to avoid nudging just words. I tend to do it in kind of blocks to keep it more natural. But I'd be interested to hear kind of how your workflow is of doing that. And you know, first thing, do you find you're nudging most things that you're recording, or do you tend to just get it so perfect coming in you don't really do any of that? What's kind of
I'm
your
usually
workflow?
nudging. Timing's
Sections
a
or words or everything?
yeah. So it's case dependent. I'll
Of
usually
course.
go by a sentence or a phrase, a bigger group,
Yeah.
and then we'll move over. But sometimes it needs to actually be moved completely. And another thing that is very necessary is how long each thing happens. So now I use X form and I warp the notes, or you can use the time modifier tool.
As I
But
to stretch the notes.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
So I mean, if it needs to be a super, every single end of the phrase needs to end on that fourth of the beat, you know what I'm saying? It just needs to be perfect every single time. And if they did it too much on one of these, I'm not going to just kind of try to filter it in, but I'm actually going to stretch that note down so it's perfectly, and it,
yeah.
it's
Do you do
confusing
that
and
in
hard to
Melodyne as
explain,
well?
but huh?
Do you do that in Melodyne as well?
I do not do that in Melodyne. I
No.
think it's maybe something I might do a little bit more in the future because now they put it into Pro Tools, but I
Yeah.
just felt it was this extra step where I still would like, mainly I'll get timing first and then tune. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? So, but I would always have to do that because you'd have to import the entire thing into Melodyne and transfer it into
Yeah.
Melodyne. So I do like getting the timing down first, in that sense though, where you've got that perfect pocket. Now you can work on the pitch because it's only going to be a little bit here and there. I mean, if you're doing a lot of work, I think there's other things to look at that are wrong. But you know, that's usually how my process is with nudging, and I got it on a 5 millisecond nudge. I don't go by
Yeah.
samples, I go by milliseconds. And I'm usually just kind of tapping it into place. That's usually where the good ballpark, either one or two clicks, up and down. And for nudging, is usually like, I'm okay. That's if I'm going more than that, I got to listen to the entire thing again. But it's usually right within that one or two clicks.
Do you find that, because I know people are going to want to know that, are you doing that when the singer is in the room, and two, does the singer ever get like worried that you're moving their rhythm or anything, or do you kind of just do it and not say anything and and
Case
they
dependent. I usually
yeah,
will just do it and not say anything, and
yeah,
then they just hear it back and they're like, okay, cool. And like, and it's kind of like that, unspoken kind of thing
rule?
that just happens. Exactly. An unspoken rule where it's just like, yo, like when they walk in, are they listening to an unpitched, an out of tune vocal that's out of time? You know what I'm saying? So I just got to, you got to take a bunch of those. You just got to know when to do that.
Yeah.
As an engineer, you have to really read the session and read who the, artist is. But because some people are like very, very dead on, and some artists, will come on and still do it by themselves and nudge by themselves. I know like Billie Eilish does it quite a bit. You got like Quavo and Offset. They do that all themselves. You got
They know
these
what they
huge
want.
artists. Ariana Grande. She's doing all of that stuff herself because they know what they want. But yeah, I'm usually doing it all just fast as possible. And if they say something against what I've done, you know what I'm saying? It's, that's just, a collaborative kind of thing. Hey, okay, move that back over a little bit. Okay, cool. And then trying to find, how they hear it and how they hear the performance. Yeah.
How long? I know this again is like how long's a piece of string, but in your day-to-day life, how long are your sessions like? When you're doing vocals or you're just recording as an engineer yourself, do you find you're in sessions for a very long time, or do you find you're managing to keep like a day-to-day kind of normal working hours kind of vibe?
There's no normal working
I know.
in this industry, which is a tough thing, and I've really been
Yeah.
trying to cope with that in many ways. Wanting to get exercise, eat at the right times, go to bed at the right times. The circadian rhythm for humans is really important. But I mean, I could be in some sessions for 16 hours, 12 hours, 8 hours, where it's 8 o'clock at night to 8 o'clock in the morning every single day. And you just got to get, flip that schedule and get on,
Do you find most of your sessions are at night?
But a majority are, but it's kind of half and half.
Yeah.
A lot of the bigger clients I've worked with, it's mainly at nighttime. And just kind of that hour where they can have a couple drinks in them. They can smoke. It's not the middle of the day, and you're like, all right, what are we doing drinking at this time? You know what I'm saying? So.
I love that.
Yeah, exactly. Because they got to be in the mood and the vibe as well. So
yeah,
whatever can help bring that out. A couple of shots is perfect.
Why not? It's 8 o'clock in the evening.
Exactly.
But
there
then
you go.
I would do it at midday and go, well, it's 7 o'clock somewhere.
Exactly. It's happy hour.
I wouldn't do that
somewhere.
So just to, last couple of questions. So are you, as an engineer yourself, are you mixing most of the things that you're engineering, or is it 50-50, or is it more engineer?
It's 50-50. And I definitely get a lot of mixed work that I don't record myself. So when it comes to actually the things that I do record, it's mainly 50-50. And it's sometimes I don't like mixing what I did record because it's just I need somebody else to do their thing on it. I've come to I've listened to it too many times. I've heard the vocal tuned this way. You guys go do your thing. I think because that definitely helps the process. So when I get something else, from somebody and I'm just mixing it, it's helpful to, sometimes not have recorded it because then I can go, okay, now I get to take a stab at it. I get to hear where it is at this moment and go from there.
Do you find that you put your engineer head on in the sense of a recording engineer more so than a mixer? If you're not if you get the projects in that you haven't engineered, do you find that you are fixing things still because you weren't engineering it?
Yeah, and I think that will always be a thing. And even when I engineer and I do mix it, I think still I'll miss a couple things here and there inside of the recording session before I bring it in. So it definitely depends, but I'm usually vocal writing no matter what in the mixing stage. So no matter what, if I recorded it, I'm usually vocal writing. I'm cleaning up S's manually. I'm cleaning up all them clicks and pops, all the mouth, all the mouth noise, all the plosives.
RX.
RX all the time. So
it's my best friend.
Exactly. It's a deadly tool. It's a
Interesting
deadly
you actually
tool.
mentioned about automation, because I find a lot of the younger, I mean, I know this is a bit of a bold statement to make, but I find back in the day, the older generation mixing engineers did a lot more riding, like vocal riding, putting in drum overheads only on the choruses, for example, that kind of stuff. And a lot of the music these days, it seems to be not as much vocal riding, just super compressed. Are you finding that, or is, is that just me?
Yeah, no, you definitely see that now a ton.
Yeah,
But I think one of the huge things, working and studying and having my mentor be Dave Pensado is just
yeah,
he worked
the
with
best.
Beyonce, he recorded Beyonce, he worked a ton with Christina Aguilera and Pink, and just realizing like, okay, that's how you can give performances to vocals, and sometimes that singer just can't get the crescendo perfect, right? And that's only a dB of volume. I can just still go in and write that out, I don't have to maybe sit there with a fader and manually do it every single time, but just clicking in some automation on the actual clip is
Yeah,
usually it's smooth, it's fast. You're able to give a little bit of life into the vocal that maybe had not 100% been there in the performance. Um, but doing that,
that's
I think,
amazing.
is
It's good to hear
very,
that.
very
Yeah,
necessary.
yeah.
It does give life to a performance. Dynamics
I think
does.
automation is
Yeah.
key.
Yeah.
I think,
It's a big
yeah.
one.
I mean, you can absolutely smash a compressor. Don't get me wrong. Obviously, it's genre dependent as well. But I feel like if I'm mixing
Exactly.
like an acoustic stuff, like if you just ride that vocal, like you compress a little bit less, but just ride that vocal, 1 or 2 dB going across the track, whatever it is. Oh, it's a million times better. Um,
100%. Yeah. And
yeah,
then writing the actual clip and the clip line, uh, that's still before, when we're talking about gain staging, that's going to be even before your initial in the box compressor. It's definitely already have come through the CL1B,
yeah,
but now you're sitting, okay, let's not absolutely destroy these digital compressors. And like I don't ever want to have something that's, looking like a block over here and then a little small thing because this is hitting the compressor crazy, and
yeah.
this little one over here, it's just going right through,
Do you
right?
gain stage
So
then to hit a certain point before
yeah,
you?
so at that point, I'm gonna
Yeah,
really look throughout the entire take,
clips.
right, and be like,
Yeah,
okay, like let's definitely bring down this section a little bit. Let's boost this one a little bit. They did it too quiet, so now it's all hitting the same point in and around these compressions. So it's all
yeah,
only ever going to go to 1.2, this 2 dB gain reduction, 3 dB gain reduction, instead of, boom, here's a 10, here's a 1, here's a
yeah.
12, here's a 1. You're like, that's too much. And you can definitely hear that when it comes out. And obviously you can just keep throwing on compressors, but you can, you can hear it. And I don't think it sounds as good. So
Do you gain stage when you're recording the vocal then as well? Do you aim to hit a certain dB, or do you kind of just put it so it's an average, hitting the compressor how you want it, and then you do the clip gain in before it hits the digital compressor to get it more even?
yeah,
Is that kind
it's
of,
mainly that. So I'm mainly
yeah,
trying to hit, the compressor, like I said, two maximum usually on the, on a CO1B, just to, it's starting to take them peaks. I'm not a complete, it's not, it's usually at like a little bit past 12 o'clock for the attack on the compressor. So it's like not super fast. It's fairly slow. It's just
yeah,
catching some of them big ones. It's just bringing it down a little bit, and then when I can go into the clip gain afterwards, it's a lot smoother. We're not
yeah,
doing huge. It's not huge jumps. Maybe 4 dB is maybe the biggest jump,
yeah,
but it makes life a lot easier when you're hitting the compressor first like that, and then it's in the box. It's a lot easier because you're not going to get this hugely, vastly different dynamics. It's
yeah.
all going to be in and around the same ballpark.
Amazing. I think a lot of engineers overthink, because sometimes people ask me, they go, "Oh, what do I hit when I record a vocal?" I'm like, always aiming to hit -60. As long as you don't distort and the gain stage is set up right for the equipment that you're using to record, like you say, anything else you can just smooth out in Pro Tools.
Exactly.
Amazing. Well, to kind of bring this conversation to a close, I wanted to ask you a question that I ask everybody else, and it always throws them. Well, not frozen, but they always think about it for a long time.
Yeah.
What is one thing that you know now in your career that you wish you knew when you started out? It's a really deep question.
Yeah. Give me a second to think. Give me 20 seconds.
Take your time.
I think the biggest thing, and you might hear it quite a lot, dependent, but I think the biggest thing for me is people and the connection of the connection between people, right? And so what I mean by that is, like, do you know how to sit in a room with people? Do you know how to not be interrupting people? Do you know how to understand the pace of conversation? Do you understand how to communicate correctly? Because I think that's a huge thing that people undermine, just throughout life. But knowing how to correctly talk to somebody, I'm not 100% perfect at it either, but knowing how to communicate is huge, because one, that can, again, make your singer or your artist feel comfortable and feels, like they can do the best thing. They understand what your role is, when you coming in and playing them the mix, they're stoked about the mix. I think communication's a huge thing, because it's not a fight against everybody else. I think in music, I think music's a huge thing and a key to life, that it needs to be shared and everybody needs to be kind of in on it. Because I think it's a very, very universal thing, and being able to communicate correctly definitely helped me launch into a next step. And then, it just kept helping me get in rooms. It kept, getting me called back, getting that call. I think how you carry yourself is huge. I don't think you have to be the absolute best person and the most musical, pitch perfect timing, geek ever. I think it needs to just really be, do you make people comfortable when you walk in the room? Is that conversation easy to be had? I don't know if that's
Everything you
if
said
that
there is absolutely amazing stuff, because I think a lot of listeners will probably be listening to this thinking, how do I get work, or how do I, get into this industry? One,
yeah,
it is, a tough industry, but at the same time, if you're nice, you communicate well, like you said, the phone does ring, and as you say, I mean,
100%,
work's usually word of mouth, isn't it? So, communicating well with people is what's going to help that.
100%,
Yeah. So,
100%.
yeah,
I think
that's
I think a
amazing
lot of
stuff.
people go for, the person who works hard and is kind versus the person who is an absolute, insane person to this degree, right? So I think communication's huge.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming onto this episode. We're
Thank you for
super
having
lucky
me.
to have you on, and I know that everyone's going to love it. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.